She is the CEO of a boutique growth consultancy for tech companies, which it was a very continuous delivery thing when she told me that. But a skunk sprayed her HVAC system, so her whole house smells like a skunk now. So, don't feel intimidated. She's going to talk to you a little bit about a feeling that I think we've all had before. So please welcome Sarah Stockdale.
For the first 365 days of my first role in tech, I was waiting for the tap. You see, I was the first woman at a technology startup, and this was a while ago. And I was one of the only non-technical people, and non-technical people in this room, we're always negotiating our space in engineering-led companies. We are always trying to prove that we are worth something to you. So for the first 365 days at my new job, I was waiting for the tap. I was waiting for someone to come up to me and say, "I'm so sorry, there's been a mistake. You don't belong here. You need to leave right now. You can exit through the gift shop." And so I spent every day for a year, every Slack message, every email I got, just waiting for someone to politely let me know there had been a mistake and ask me to leave. This anxiety got really exhausting. Just thinking you're gonna get fired all the time is like draining. So I quit. Another technology startup asked me to come work for them, and I said, yeah, this one's gonna let me go anyway, so I'm gonna come. And I sat across from my boss, and I told him the news that I was leaving. And he got this look of panic across his face, and my initial reaction was, oh my God, he really wanted to fire me. Like, I am now doing that "you can't fire me, I quit" thing to him, and he's pissed. And he said, "We have to fix this. You have to stay. What can we do?" I had been telling myself a story for 365 days, and it wasn't real. So when I was asked to come speak here today, this is a very intimidating crowd of people. And there's a whole bunch of things that I wanted to talk to you about, because women in tech is my jam. This is the space that I operate in, and this is where I live. And I care a lot about the gender pay gap. And I care a lot about the fact that only 2% of companies are VC funded, are founded by women. There are so many problems in this industry that I wanted to address with you today. But I write this thing called We Need to Talk About This. It's a newsletter and a blog. And I write about this stuff all the time. And the thing that people write back to me about, the thing that people respond in an email to the newsletter for, is when I talk about fear and anxiety. So I thought I would talk to you a little bit about what I have learned in the last 8 years of being a highly anxious person. And the first thing is that we become the stories that we most often tell ourselves. I told myself a story for 365 days that I was about to be fired, and then I was retained. We become the stories we tell ourselves, and those stories matter. And I call the voice in my head that tells me the stories the fear gremlin. And for a while, I called the fear gremlin Regina George, because she is the meanest girl I could think of. But then I was like too scared of it, so I named him Hank. Hank tells me stories all the time. Hank says things to me like, "You aren't smart enough for that job," or "You're not good enough for that promotion," or "You're not successful enough for how old you are. You're not good enough." And I've learned a couple of different ways of coping with Hank. The first one is realizing that that voice in your head isn't you. Give it a name. It's somebody else. Create space between yourself and that voice that's telling you all of this bullshit. The second piece is starting to doubt Frank a little bit So Frank would say something to me like, "You're not good enough." And I'd say, "Okay, Frank, fine, again, but maybe not." And I'd start to create space between what Frank said and what I believed. Frank would say, "You're not good enough," and I would say, "I hear you, but maybe not." And then I started to doubt Frank. I started to call Frank on his bullshit, because sometimes Frank had bad stories to tell me that didn't make sense. Humans are really bad at the space between knowing something, between asking a question and getting the answer. I am a very, very anxious person, so when I used to send an email, Frank, actually, not me, used to make up stories about what the person I sent the email to was thinking. Oh, they didn't respond fast enough. They think I'm stupid. They didn't like what I said. They didn't like my ideas. They didn't like the proposal. And I didn't know how to deal with the fact that I just didn't know the answer to that question. And I let Frank go wild making up stories. He has such an imagination, and he is never positive. So I started to doubt him. I started to ask him to bring receipts. I started to ask Frank to give me evidence for his claims. Because your fear has exactly as much information as you do. If it's telling you stories, they're fiction. Because if it's not the information you've been given, it's really just figuring out something to do in the place where you don't know. And getting really comfortable with just not knowing the answer to something until you get it is going to make Frank shut the fuck up. The next thing that I find Frank likes to do a lot, and a problem that we all have in 2019, is the feed. Frank loves to go through the feed and find women, gorgeous women, laughing over their avocado toast. Or people who just happen to have all of these garden supplies in this Eden-like place looking stunning. And Frank will go, "That person is so much more gorgeous than you are. That person is so much more stylish than you are. That person who just got that promotion on LinkedIn, so much more successful than you." And I learned a little word game that I play with Frank when he starts to do this. "Okay, Frank, that person is so much blank than me. I agree with you. I really admire that about that person." Because admiration is the antidote to jealousy. If you decide that the people who spark your fear gremlin are people you really admire because they have something you want, then that's when you can create some connection with those people. Because comparison is the enemy of community. If you're comparing yourself against other people, and specifically against other women, it's really hard to make connections with those people. And those are the people you want to connect with the most, because they have something you want. They know how to get that thing. And if they know how to get that thing, maybe they would take some time to teach you if you just ask them. So some of your homework today is list 3 women who spark your fear gremlin when you see them on Instagram or LinkedIn, or in a code base, and tell them that you admire them. Tell them how much you think they're amazing, and ask them if they would take the time to show you how to get what they have. And now you're creating community. Take it, Hank. The next piece is asking for what you want. So I used to think rejection was real, and like anyone who's been dumped knows that, like, yeah, it's kind of real. But a mentor once told me that rejection isn't actually real. If you ask for something you want and the answer is no, you end up exactly where you started. You have exactly as much as you started with. You have lost nothing. What you have gained is a little bit of information. If you ask for a raise at work and you're not given it, now you know that you can't get that amount of money at this place, so maybe I find a new place. Maybe I vote with my feet and go find that money somewhere else. But if you didn't ask, you'd never have that information. And maybe, just maybe, you'll get what you asked for. And now you're ahead. Frank's not liking this very much at all. So, today, we are going to call our fear gremlins on its bullshit. And we're going to name our fear gremlins. Like, everyone needs to come up with a name. Don't use Regina George. It's too scary. It's way too scary. If she walked in here right now, I would get the out of here. Just terrifying. When you're going through the feed, we're going to remember that admiration is the antidote to jealousy. And we're going to start asking for what we want more often. because I learned something becoming an entrepreneur. And it's the people that are the most successful in the world are not the smartest. They're not the best at their jobs. They're not the most capable at all. They're just a tiny bit braver than those other people. A tiny bit braver. They're willing to put their art and their work and their companies out into the world. They're willing to ask for the things that they want, and they are willing to admit when they don't know something and ask for help. So today, I think we can all be just a little bit braver and put something out into the world that we all deserve to see. Thank you.